This question here asks you to use a for loop to print out the contents of this list. And this is a good time to break down what a for loop is and how it works. In computer science in general, there are three base components, right? The analogy I like to use is a DNA. You have the 4 base pairs. In computer science, you have the 3 base pairs, or whatever it is you want to call it, right? And what are they? They are variables, branches, and loops. Variables we've gone over. Branches we kind of touched on earlier, but what it allows your program to do is make a decision. If a statement is true, do this, or else do that, right? So make a decision. And then loops allow your program to repeat a block of code as many times as you want. And every program that you've ever seen, from the most complicated AI down to the simplest hello world, use these tools in order to solve problems, right? And that's all they have. That's all that's available. And that's the essence of computer science, is taking a limited set of tools and using them in creative ways to solve complex problems. And so what is a for loop? The standard for loop goes like this. And I run it, and I get this block of code to repeat 5 times, right? This block of code we know is inside of the for loop because it's indented, and it's indented using a tab. I'm pressing tab. I am not pressing space 4 times, right? Please don't get in the habit of pressing space to indent. Use the tab button. It's going to save you headache in the future. And so what is exactly happening in this for loop? Well, there's a couple things that are happening. Okay, first thing is a variable called I is created, and it's set equal to 0. The next thing that happens is I is compared to the number that is inside of the parentheses here. Now, if I is less than 5, then this statement is true. If this statement is true, it's going to come into the body of the for loop, which could be 1 line of code, it could be 2 lines of code, it could be 5,000 lines of code. Right? It's going to execute the body of the for loop. Right? So print hello world once. When it gets to the bottom of the body, finished executing, it's going to come back up, and it's going to do I plus plus. Plus equals 1, which we went over earlier is the same as I is equal to I plus 1, which is adding 1 to I's previous value. Right? So I was previously 0. Now I is going to be 1. After this executes, right? So we execute this, and it's going to check this again. So is 1 less than 5? Yes, it is. So it's going to come into the body, print out hello world for the second time. It's going to come back to here, and it's going to increment I. I is going to be incremented to 2. It's going to check, true, print, check, true, print, check, true, print. When is this going to be false? It's going to be false when I increments from 4 to 5. And then it checks this statement. Is it true? 5 is not less than 5. That's false. So it does not execute again. It goes to line number 3 and continues sequential execution of your code. So it does 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, right? We don't have any more lines of code. So once this for loop finishes executing 5 times, it breaks and the computer program ends. Right? Now if I change this to 3, I get that. If I change it to 1, I get that. Okay, now this is the most common variation of the for loop, right? Execute this body this number of times. The kind of for loop that this question is asking you to build is a different one. There's a different variation. So here we're gonna put a list. So let's go ahead and copy and paste it like that. Oh my goodness gracious! It's using these strange quotes that we don't want to use. These are, I refer to them as Microsoft Word quotes. We want to use ASCII quotes, which are just standard text quotes, and these are different. So go ahead and you want to replace those. And then the way that this is going to work is I doesn't get set to 0 when this for loop begins to execute. What I get set to is the first value in the list. So I is equal to the word red on the first iteration, then I is equal to the word orange on the second iteration, the word yellow on the third iteration, and so on until it finishes everything, and then the for loop ends execution. So this for loop here is going to execute this many number of times. So the same number of commas that are in this list is how many times it's going to execute, basically, or the number of commas plus 1, because we don't have one here on the end. Right. So how can we print out the contents of this list using the for loop? Well, we can not print this string, instead print I. Right. So that way it's going to print red the first iteration, yellow the second, orange the second, yellow the third, and so on as it iterates. Right. And so that is a brief introduction on for loops, which is a tool that you are going to be using quite regularly as you move forward.